Hello and welcome back to another Parry This video. Today we are tackling another topic from the Arthurian legends. This time we are dealing with another member of the Orkney clan. Today's knight is Sir Gaheris, brother to Agravaine, Gareth, and Gawain. Like all of these brothers, he is the son of King Lot of Orkney and Morgause, the sister of King Arthur. This makes Sir Gaheris a nephew of King Arthur, and the half-brother of Mordred. So, now that you know who we're talking about, let's dive on in and get to know who this guy really is. When it comes to Gaheris, he is certainly one of, if not the least popular and well-known of the Orkney clan. Gawain typically takes up most of the spotlight, and then Gareth has quite a bit of his own story as well. However, Sir Gaheris actually comes to King Arthur's court at the same time as his brother Gawain. After the Battle of Bedegraine, or the Battle against the 11 Kings, this battle is typically seen as the decisive battle of the Britons that resulted in King Arthur being recognized as High King over all other British kings. Ironically, King Lot of Orkney, the father of the knights we've been talking about, is actually one of the 11 kings that opposed Arthur in this battle. It is said that he supplied the enemy army with 5,000 mounted men, equaling or exceeding the contribution of many of the other kings. And it was actually the next battle, the Battle of Terabell, where King Lot would be slain by King Pellinore, but that is a story for another day. For now, let's focus on Sir Gaheris. So after the Battle of Bedegraine, Queen Morgause brings her sons Gawain, Agravaine, and Gaheris to King Arthur's court, after being summoned by Merlin, who had revealed to Morgause that Arthur was actually her brother, and the eldest son of King Uther Pendragon. So, in addition to having pulled his sword from the stone, Arthur also had the legitimate bloodline backing up his claim to the throne. Upon seeing Arthur, Morgause recognized him as family, and announced her support for him as High King. At this time, Gawain swore service to King Arthur, and Sir Gaheris was serving as Gawain's squire. It was at the wedding of King Arthur and Guinevere that Sir Gawain was knighted by King Arthur himself. After this, Gawain and Gaheris left on a quest, as was the norm for freshly minted knights of Arthur's court. It is said that in their quests, Gaheris would often serve as a temperance for Gawain's hot temper, and even as Gawain's conscience, often reminding him to be courteous or chivalrous in situations where Gawain's ire would get the better of him. For example, early on in their adventures, they came across a damsel in distress who asked for help, but consumed by his given quest, Gawain ignores her and continues onward. When they have achieved the quest, they return and find her dead. This lady was Lady Ablamar of the Marsh. Gaheris admonishes Gawain for her death, and makes Gawain understand that her blood was on his hand, and he had the power to help her, and did not, and therefore did not act as a true knight. In many tellings, this is a turning point in Gawain's character that led him to become the courteous and chivalrous knight that he would eventually turn out to be. During these early adventures, a bond is formed between Gawain and Gaheris that would last through to Gaheris' death. In most tellings, Gaheris is the closest friend and brother to Gawain. However, in some, Gareth is referred to as Gawain's closest sibling. In any case, after a few years of questing with Sir Gawain as his squire, Gaheris would finally be knighted by King Arthur and set forth to adventure on his own. And on his adventures he would gain fame and reputation, and make a name for himself that would be distinguished from even his famous brothers. Gaheris is often represented as a friend of common people, treating them as equals, and even displaying an affinity for agriculture himself. In one story, Sir Gaheris is riding along, when he exits a path through thick vegetation to get out of the woods. When he does so, he startles a man who is bringing his wares into town to sell them. This man has a cart that is being drawn by a mule. When Sir Gaheris rode by, the mule was startled by his sudden appearance, and bolted. As a result, the man was thrown from the small cart, before it was smashed against the trees, and the mule darted off into the woods. Sir Gaheris helped the man up and ensured that he was all right. Gaheris then tracked the mule down, with the intention of bringing it back for the poor man. However, when he finally found it, the mule had been killed by wolves. Sir Gaheris returned to the man and gave him a ride on his horse back to the castle where he was staying. There he gave the man one of his own horses, a fine palfrey, as well as 5 gold coins, far exceeding the value of the man's lost goods and broken cart. It was from this man, who was a farmer, that Sir Gaheris learned about agriculture and came to have a love for growing things. Sir Gaheris is also usually described as quiet and witty. This helped him make friends easily and apparently helped him to become quite the ladies' man, as many of the stories including him often end with Gaheris getting the girl. His official sweetheart was the Demoiselle de la Blanche Lande, but this did not prevent him from courting other beauties. There is also a story where he fought the Cornish knight Matto le Brun and stole his lover away, sending the Cornishman out of his mind. So, much like a lot of Arthurian legend, Sir Gaheris' stories often hold deep romantic angles that helped them appeal to 12th century females of the court. In the end of Gaheris' romantic life, we, of course, have his marriage to either the savage damsel, Lynette, or her sister, Lady Lionesse, depending which version of the tale you read. In either case, Gaheris and his younger brother Gareth marry these two ladies, who are also sisters, after Gareth's most famous quest. It's an interesting one, so if you haven't watched my Sir Gareth video, you really are missing out. However, there is an exception to Sir Gaheris' quiet and soft-spoken demeanor, and that is when he gets angry. It is said that when angered, Gaheris is prone to excess, and in this state is often referred to as the least well-spoken of his peers. But it was in these states where he was able to show his prowess. He is described as agile and valiant, and interestingly, handsome, even though his right arm was actually longer than his left arm. This may have made his appearance slightly off, but it resulted in a unique fighting ability when using a sword in his right hand and a shield in his left. As a result of the abnormality and his ability to adapt, opponents would often judge his reach based on his shield, and then only realize their mistake when a quick lunge or strike had wounded them severely. In most stories, Gaheris is stated to be the second greatest warrior of the Orkney clan, only behind Gawain. However, in the Vulgate Merlin, he is described as the best warrior among the brothers, and in the prose Tristan, he is noted to be a far better knight than his brother Gawain. Some of Gaheris' other adventures include the time he rescued his brothers Agravaine and Gawain from Newcastle, where they had been imprisoned, then the time where he rescued Gawain and Morholt from the Rock of Maidens, and like many of Arthur's knights, the time that he killed a giant. For Sir Gaheris, the giant was named Opatris. As far as Newcastle goes, it was a castle that was rather new, thus the name, and it was home to a self-serving lord who ruled his lands with an iron fist. This lord was a knight who was skilled and strong. This knight would invite knights to challenge him through malicious actions, with the intent of defeating all of Arthur's knights, so that Arthur himself would come forth. One by one, this knight defeated many of Arthur's knights, including Sir Kay, Sir Bedivere, Sir Bors de Ganis, and even Sir Agravaine and Sir Gawain. To make a long story short, he would usually do this through deception or some other less than honorable means. In one case, this meant jousting with a knight who was not fully armored. In another, it meant a duel after the knight had fallen ill. And in another, it was by using a lance that was nearly 2 feet longer than a typical tourney lance. In any case, Gaheris was able to beat him by preparation and good luck. He was able to make it to Newcastle without being injured or falling ill. And being prepared for the knight's treachery, he had his guard up. When he jousted against the knight, Sir Gaheris unhorsed him honorably. Once on the ground, Gaheris called for him to yield, but the knight suddenly attacked him. However, Gaheris was expecting treachery and was ready. In a moment, he had drawn his sword and brought it down with such force that it split the knight's skull through his helmet. Gaheris then freed his brothers and the other imprisoned knights. The Maiden's Rock story is similar, but plays more to Gaheris' strengths outside of martial combat. In this story, it came to Gaheris' attention that while on a quest, Gawain and Morholt had been captured by nymphs and taken to the Land of Maidens, where they were imprisoned in a castle called the Maiden's Rock. The castle was more of a palace than anything else, but the prison was the land, which was outside of the mortal world, and could not be reached except by exceedingly powerful magic. Gaheris, however, knew that to get there was easy, i.e., he just needed to get captured like the other knights had. His difficulty would be returning. It is said that Gaheris sought out the aid of a Lady of the Lake, whom he had met at Arthur's court years earlier, who informed him that he needed life from their world to return. Gaheris, a man with his mind always on agriculture, realized that this link would be attainable through a specific plant. He therefore cut a piece of a vine nearby and then placed it in a leather pouch that he kept hidden. Gaheris then allowed himself to be captured, and was taken to the Maiden's Rock. Once there, he found Gawain and Morholt, and telling them to hold his arm, he removed the pouch and opened it. When he touched the piece of the vine, he and his companions were brought forth into their own world, and they all returned to Arthur's court. Finally, we have the time where Gaheris joined the ranks of the Great Knights by slaying a giant. This giant's name was Opatris. He was a villain in Cornwall, where he had been causing troubles for some time. At one point, the Great Knight Tristram sought to defeat the giant to put an end to his cruel tyranny and to add to his own reputation. However, King Mark of Cornwall, an enemy of Tristram's, tipped off Opatris, who then ambushed and captured Tristram, with the intention of publicly executing him. When Sir Gaheris heard of this treachery, he set out to rescue Sir Tristram, who had long been his friend. Gaheris had no intentions of getting embroiled in the affairs of Cornwall, so he did not intend to kill Aupatris, merely to sneak into the village to free Tristram. However, during the escape, the alarm was sounded and Aupatris burst forth from his hall and ran at them. Sir Gaheris quickly pushed the weakened Tristram out of the way of the charging giant, and drew his own sword. As the giant lurched at him, Gaheris raised his own shield as if to draw a sustained block. Seeing this, the giant reared up for a mighty strike, but the block was a feint. The moment Gaheris noticed the giant's club move, he darted out from behind the shield and plunged his sword directly into Aupatris' stomach. He withdrew the blade quickly, spilling the giant's guts onto the ground. Aupatris took one more step towards Gaheris, but was now slow and weakened. So Gaheris parried his blow and took off the giant's arm at the elbow. The final strike was an upward thrust through the giant's chin, up through the top of his skull. When the giant died, the weight of his body broke Gaheris' sword, but Gaheris was able to leap back and walk away unharmed. Then he and Tristram left and made for King Arthur's court. Finally, we come to the tragic ending that most of the Orkney clan face when the song is up. When Mordred discovered Lancelot and Guinevere's affair, Sir Gaheris tried to get Mordred not to reveal it, as he was a friend to Lancelot and didn't want to see the kingdom torn apart, which he knew was Mordred's only intent. However, Mordred was evil and self-serving, so he immediately revealed the affair to the king. When Guinevere was sentenced to death by burning at the stake, Sir Gareth and Sir Gaheris were assigned to transport her to the stake. They were armed, but they were not armored, and when Lancelot and his party rescued Guinevere, Lancelot killed both Sir Gaheris and Sir Gaheris. It is said that he stabbed Gareth through the heart and then split Sir Gaheris' skull open after one of his companions had pulled the knight's helmet off. This, of course, is the end of Sir Gaheris' story, but starts the fall of Camelot, which I discuss more in my videos about Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, and King Arthur. Sir Gaheris' arms are described as either two silver swords crossed on a blue field, or as a two-headed golden eagle on a pink field. He is not noted to have won any tournaments, but was said to have considerable skill with both the sword and the lance, as well as horsemanship. It appears to have been a result of usually jousting against much better knights, such as his brother Gawain, Sir Lancelot, Sir Tristram, and of course, many others. As far as more modern media is concerned, Sir Gaheris appears in T.H. White's The Once and Future King, where he is depicted differently, namely as being bland and dull-witted. He also appears in the 1995 film The First Knight, where he fights very well in the final battle for Camelot, and actually comes away from a battle with the antagonist of the movie, Maligant, who is essentially Mordred, having fared quite well. And in Gerald Morris's The Squire's Tales, he appears several times, and is one of the main heroes. In these stories, he has his traditional depiction as a brave, witty, and quiet knight who actually prefers agriculture to sword fighting. But in any case, that is actually all we have to say about Sir Gaheris the Quiet. I did my best to include all of his greatest feats while keeping it brief. So I hope you enjoyed it and found this video to be entertaining as well as educational. But either way, thanks for watching and have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.